Pat Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the Exit Readiness Podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable business value and for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's sellable or transferable and then exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. As a small business owner, you experience countless transactions with customers, vendors, suppliers, et cetera, that require negotiation skills. A successful business owner is often marked or characterized by skilled negotiation. There's one negotiation where Walter and I always recommend you engage professional assistance, and that's the sale of your business. There's just too much at stake. All that you've built, all of your personal goals are at stake. So there's a lot at stake. And so we believe that warrants professional experienced help. Professional help that might look like a business broker, an investment banker, M&A attorney, and always your trusted CPA like Walter Dial here, working alongside those transaction specialists. At the same time, we know that some of you will end up negotiating the transaction yourself, or at least being very much involved with the negotiation for various reasons. And so today we want to help you with some tips for a successful negotiation when selling your business. Our topic today, never mind. Walter, go ahead.
That's right, Pat. And our topic today is key ingredients for a successful negotiation. And our guest is negotiation consultant Randy Cutts of Scott Work, North America. Randy has extensive experience working at the highest levels of corporate, government, and foreign dignitary contexts. He's skilled in negotiation, public speaking, training, executive coaching, and consulting, and is a certified professional in learning performance, focused on negotiation and soft skills, training with over 2,500 classroom hours and 3,800 students taught. Randy's personal tagline is, "I change behavior at the negotiation table, so your deal making saves you time, relationships, and money." Welcome to the podcast, Randy. We are thrilled to have you.
Great. Hey, thanks, guys. Really appreciate the invite, Walter and Pat. Great to be here.
So, Randy, let me ask you a question. You are the only negotiation coach consultant I know. How did you get into that field?
I'm not the only one out there, but the only one that you know. That's really interesting. I have been in one form or another in a negotiation training context. I think I really stumbled into it. If you go back to the financial crisis of 07, 8, 9, I got into real estate right about this peak of the market as it was tanking. And my business partner and I, trying to build a successful business, we saw the market shift and we shifted with it, and we got into pre-foreclosure short sales before anybody really knew what they were. We're selling short sale services and people thought we were short selling stocks. We're actually helping homeowners negotiate with their bank who was proposing taking their property back. And we found a win-win-win solution where we could sell the asset, we could sell the property to a buyer. The buyer gets a good deal. The bank doesn't have to take it back because banks are not in property management businesses. And the homeowner gets to liquidate the asset without having a foreclosure on their record. And so we were negotiating with negotiators that banks didn't really have the skills to do that, sought them out, got coaching and consulting in that space. And then the rest of it took off. I spent then a lot of time. I went up to Harvard 3 times for negotiation training, U.S. Institute of Peace, the Real Estate Institute of Negotiation. Then I stumbled upon Scott Work, which has been doing this for 45 years around the globe, and really are the trendsetter in negotiation coaching space. And so That's my story. It kind of coalesced, into this space that I absolutely love, because every deal is different, coming alongside people, helping them, in essence, resolve conflict, find an alternative path forward to whatever that conflict looks like. And it's, in a business context, I'm helping people on the buyer side, the seller side, internal negotiations from all sectors in government as well as private commercial industry. So that's the short version.
Wow, very, very, very interesting. And many of the clients that Pat and I work with, I mean, the most important negotiation they're ever going to participate in is the one where they sell their business. So let me ask you a question. I mean, do you guys operate with a specific definition of the word negotiation, or is it just what we all kind of think it is?
Well, we have a starting point, and that is what people think negotiation is, and then we try to unteach them that. Negotiation, in its Webster version of definition, it actually means without leisure. it's the nego, it's the without, and the otum in a Latin sense, it's a without leisure. It's work. It's hard work. Negotiation is. Most people think negotiation is persuasion. It's the sumo wrestler forcing all of their logic and influence and agenda to the other side to try to get my way at the expense of your dollars or your time or whatever else it is that you're giving up. And so it's usually one-sided, but that is not a good recipe for successful negotiations. And negotiation in its classroom definition, if you will, is really two parties coming together, giving and taking, exchanging areas of lesser importance, giving up in order to gain in areas of greater importance to them. And both parties have to walk away with some sense of a satisfaction, success, win, if you will. And that's where it becomes a win-win aspect of negotiation. Problem is, most people think that win-win is 50-50, and that's not what we refer to. Most deals don't work out in a balanced 50-50 way. They just work out in a way that is acceptable to both parties, all things having been considered. So negotiation takes work, takes time, but at the end of the day, you're more happy with the deal getting done than you are with it not getting done, and that's what you're after.
Yeah, for sure. So are there some kind of overarching principles involved in negotiation that kind of relate to all types of negotiation?
Yeah, sure, Walter. There's probably the number one thing that I would always want an audience that's tuned in, listening, thinking about negotiation to understand is that it cannot be a one-sided deal. A negotiation in its basic form is really a type of conflict resolution. You have two parties that have interests, and they're not necessarily overlapping interests. And so you've got to find a way to get them to overlap before the deal can move forward. And so you have to start your negotiation in a preparation mode, thinking not just what you want out of the deal, but thinking double, thinking what the other side wants out of the deal. If you approach the bargaining table one-sided, only what I want, then it's going to just either not get done, or it's going to get done at the expense of the relationship. And so going into a negotiation, you always have to think of the other side of the table, because unless you're in one-off deals, transactional deals, you never have to see the person again, never want to do business with the person again, which is usually not characteristic of most negotiations. But if you're in that, maybe you don't care about the relationship. But I think at the end of the day, we all live in a small universe, and we really want to know that the other side felt good about the deal as well. And so I would say, yeah, it's a two-sided a transaction. You got to think double, and you got to prepare in that particular way. That would be an overriding principle of negotiation.
Yeah. So
Randy, what are there characteristics or traits or skills that you observe in folks who or just have great success in negotiation?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, Pat. What's really funny is, and I know this isn't actually a setup because you don't know what I'm going to say about this point, but when I teach negotiation, I always think fundamentally negotiation is it's an information game. No one ever walked away from the bargaining table wishing that they had less information. It was like, oh, I just had way too much information. I didn't know what to do with any of that. We always want more information. We always walk away saying, if I only knew, if I only understood what their limit position was, what their real interest was, then I could have gotten the deal done better, faster. And so I always tell people that it's really about information giving and getting. That's the first trade in a negotiation. And so you have to be masterful at asking questions. You have to be really, really effective at asking questions. And I joke about that, Pat, because your name always comes up in the context when I'm teaching. Say, I've got a friend, Pat Ennis, who would ask amazing questions in a just non-invasive way. I remember distinctly being at a basketball game with our kids, and you're asking me all these different questions, and my wife is sitting there, and we get up, we leave, and she's like, hey, how come you never ask Pat any questions? I'm like, because he's a master at this. He just asks, listens, asks follow-up questions, and the information that flows from that is brilliant, and it's useful, and it's helpful, certainly in your profession, but at the bargaining table. And so I always say to go into it being curious, have childlike curiosity. What's going on? Don't be afraid of slowing the deal down, pacing the deal just by asking a lot of questions. It's an amazing thing when you ask questions. People tend to answer, and it's an empowering position to be in. And when people are answering questions about themselves, about their services, about their interests, their needs, their wants, their pain points, they walk away from that feeling like this person actually cares about what my position is, what my interests are. And so something subtly is happening. You're gaining information, but at the same time, you're gaining trust. And it builds upon itself, and more trust yields more information, and more information is what you can put deals together that makes sense to both parties. And so, long answer to a short question, but you've got to master the art of asking questions about the other side, and then engage in active listening, and make it about them, and the information that comes is going to help you put the deal together.
Yeah, so being postured to seek to understand. And so it would also make sense then, Randy, too, that you got to be clear on what it is you really want when you go to the deal table, if you will, right? So you want to seek to understand or ask masterful questions and find out what it is that the person on the other side of the table really wants. But you have to be clear on what you want and your goals and objectives, be they financial. In our case, when we're dealing with business owners, we talk to them about financial goals, values-based goals, legacy goals, so that they're cleared, so they have no regrets. What would you say about that, being clear on what it is you want when you go to the...
Yeah, unfortunately, it should be a given that people know what they want, but they really don't. And then if you've got business partners that are trying to sell the asset, it could be family members, could be, they're not on the same page. And so I agree with you, Pat, that the alignment has to happen internally within the organization so that they know clearly what they want without ambiguity. That's the one goalpost that has to be clearly erected. The other goalpost is what the other side wants. Now you've got two goalposts, and the football analogy comes into view that, what counts in the deal is what lands between the goalposts, right? That's the zone of possible agreements. So you hear about it as a ZOPA. That's the bargaining arena. That's where deals get done. But it's only defined by what one party wants and what the other party wants. And is there overlap? If one party is unclear about what they want and that goalpost is constantly moving, it's going to be really hard to put a deal together. So absolutely. And I say that it's most people fixate only on their side of the table, though. They only think about what they want, and they never think double about what the other side might want as well. And that's an essential ingredient for successful deals.
Hey, Randy, let me ask you something. It seems to me um, that if both parties have the same highest goal. So let's say that both parties, the most important thing is money. The one guy wants to get the maximum price. The seller wants the maximum price. The buyer wants to pay the least possible. That's going to be a hard one. Well, the situation Pat and I have dealt with, which I think is interesting, is when the goals of the parties are not the same. So for instance, we've had situations where the owner of a company is very interested in continuing the culture of his company, and he wants to reward his employees or his family members. So his goal is to keep the company alive. So he's willing to sell it to insiders at less than the price he could get by selling to an outside party. And at the same time, the insiders don't have a lot of money, so they need to get it at a reasonable price. So those two kind of mesh perfectly, and it makes the negotiation a lot easier. But I could see a situation where, the seller believes he needs to get $10 million to survive financially in retirement. The buyer believes the company's worth $6 million. If you can do what you and Pat have been talking about, which is draw the other person out, if really it's not so much the $10 million that the person needs, but instead it's financial security. And maybe that $10 million number is just a crazy number from a financial security standpoint. So I could see where you could have an issue where, it's not the buyer's place to say, no, you don't really need $10 million to survive. But maybe that guy's not being well served by his advisors, which could throw a real roadblock into the negotiations, I would think.
Yeah, it really bring out an interesting point, Walter. A lot of times people confuse objective and strategy to accomplish that objective. And I think at the highest level, both parties on the transaction need to understand what the overarching objective is. What are you trying to accomplish? The money is just a means to an end. It's a strategy to accomplish an objective. And so you need to be rock solid on the objective, but you need to be flexible on how you actually get there, what the strategy is to get there. The danger in most negotiation is, and really the things that cause deals to fall apart and not get across the finish line, is that both parties are negotiating on one variable, and it's usually money. It's usually just price. One's high, one's low. You can't close the gap. And it's the skillful negotiator, and I think with the help of advisors like both of you, who can come alongside, ask the right questions that draw out some of the underlying motivators and drivers to understand what other variables would be important to you in addition to the money. If you're negotiating just on one variable, it's two dogs on the either end of one bone, and it's a win-lose, and it's a painful process, and that's never going to work. So you always want to negotiate with more than one variable. You've got the price component, but what are the other things that become important to you? Because the trade-offs happen, and oftentimes the deals get done when there are non-monetary components that are these legacy components of sort of, keeping the deal, keeping the family name, keeping the brand, keeping the culture, keeping all these other things that become more important. And I think understanding what is the priorities of these variables then helps the buyer or seller to add value to some variables and remove value from other variables, and getting them off of just fixating on price alone or just one solo variable, because those deals are almost impossible to get done. So they're out there. When I'm coaching, consulting, and I find that that's what they're really fixated on, I try to understand why. Well, what do you want to do with the money? And I spend a lot of time in real estate space. So sellers are selling an asset, a commodity in essence, right? So they're selling something on the marketplace. They want the money, but it's always tied to something else that they actually want to do. Buyers are buying not a house commodity, they're buying a home, a place to put pictures on the walls and raise family and build memories. And so there's different, so they get hung up on the dollar amount, but there's just different drivers there. And once you can eke those out, you can actually help them to understand that it's not just about that number. There's other ways around there because you can focus on other variables, and that gets the deals done at the end of the day.
Yeah, so our process, if you will, for comprehensive exit planning, Randy, begins with a foundation, a starting point of clarifying goals and objectives.
Mm-hmm.
Financial goals, of course, which owners are often willing to talk about, and they've got that on the front burner in their mind. But then some of the other things, when you start to ask them about values-based legacy goals and things like that, sometimes they can think it's a waste of time and not real important. The soft skills stuff, who needs it? Why do we need to talk about this stuff? Whereas we realize that downstream, if you're not clear on the objective, then the goalpost can continue to move the way you just illustrated a few minutes ago. There can be confusion. At the end of the day, there just may not be a deal that's negotiated because you're not real clear on what you want from the outset. What would you say about that strategy of making sure for a successful negotiation at the end of the day, how important is it? You've been talking about it, but any last thoughts or any other thoughts you would have on the importance of clarifying goals and objectives and spending or investing the amount of time in doing that that's really warranted and required?
Yeah, look, it's I think in your world, it's a long sale. And what's interesting is that, and people oftentimes ignore this one element with your clients, you're negotiating, in essence, you're negotiating with your clients before you're negotiating for your clients. if you're going to help them and selling their assets, their business, you've got to negotiate with them, in essence, for the time to talk about the priorities. You got to negotiate with them for answering key questions that really draw out what their motivators and drivers and timelines and goals and ambitions are. And so I would not shortchange that at all. Recognize that that's a long game, and you always have to be holding the mirror up in front of them and say, this is what you've said, this is what you're saying your goals are. Are these still important to you? Because therefore, then we need to be focused on X, Y, and Z to set it up on that timeline with that key objective. So don't shortchange on that front end with your client of getting information out. You as an advisor in your negotiator role, I always think of Victor Keim has this quote. It says, "You must be part Sherlock Holmes and part Sigmund Freud." Negotiators should observe everything, and bake that into the cake, right? It's all of this information, all these ingredients, because now you're going to serve up to them a plan that it's based on everything that they have said. And you've got to spend the time getting that information. And I have no other way to get it other than asking the questions and the follow-up questions and then testing those things. You can make assumptions about where they are, but then you have to test those assumptions. And then again, making sure that all parties of interest, all the stakeholders are aligned. And if they're not, make sure that they're at least represented, that their positions are represented. Otherwise, they're going to spoil the soup right at the last minute. They're going to come in with some additional demands, and then you're not able to get across the finish line. I think the other thing to keep in mind, at the end of the day, for everyone, we always, I love this question, what business are you in? I always ask that no matter where I am in the classroom, what business are you in? And people want to tell you, well, I'm in the, I'm a certified financial planner. I help people sell businesses. I plan for exit strategies. But really, at the end of the day, we're all in the people business. Every one of us is in the people business, and people are funny. People, and it's the most predictable, unpredictable thing, right? You know that people are going to come in and they're going to change, but yesterday you said this has to be this, has to be this, and then today it's a completely different thing. So I think that we'll always have to be checking in. We always have to be making sure that we're aligned, making sure that they're aligned, making sure we're still on track with the goals that they've set, and anticipate and expect that things are going to change. Even at the 11th hour, things are going to change. It's just the nature of dealing with people, and no matter what business we're in. As good advisors, I think it's being able to flex, adjust, and bring them along and bring our systems along so that we can truly be of service to them. I think also at the end of the day, bringing it back just to a negotiation transaction, the real success and how I want my participants in a classroom sense or a consulting sense to measure success. And it's a hard thing to measure, but it's an important thing to strive to achieve. That the real success of any negotiation, internal, external, selling a product or a service in your business or selling your business itself, is will the other side ever want to do business with me again? That's the true measure of a success, that they deem that the process was fair and that the outcome was reasonable. I didn't get everything I wanted, but I was treated fairly, and I got all that I could get, I think, given the circumstances, given the time, the information, whatever else it is. And so that's how I think you should go into a negotiation. I think that's how we should run our businesses. Is not one-off transactions. I never have to see or deal with that person again, but rather would they want me back as a customer once now they own my business? And that's a different way of looking at it, because it's focused on the people side of what it is that you're actually doing. And I think if we can be successful there, we can hang our head high and be pleasing to our maker and pleasing to the person we just had a transaction with.
Randy, if you had a business today and you were thinking about transitioning out and doing whatever you're going to do next, and you had invested the necessary time to get clear on what it was you wanted to do afterwards and all your goals and objectives, would you think of and you decided the best exit route with the help of your great exit planning advisors was going to be sale to a third party? Would you think of that as an actual selling your business, or would you think of it as I'm going to negotiate a transfer? How would you think about it? Would you think about it in the category of selling or negotiating?
Yeah. So great question. I think it's a subtle distinction that has to be made in people's mind. Selling is usually thought of as persuading. I'm going to persuade you to see it my way, my price, my terms, my perspective, and then you just embrace that. You just adopt that. That's kind of a selling, features and benefits, and then my price tags on that. Negotiating is a little different, because negotiating, you go into it expecting that there's going to be pushback, that it's more of a trade. I'm going to have to give up some things that I might want in order to gain other things that I want. I'm going to have to give up things that they want to move the deal forward. And so it is different. Selling is different than negotiating. You can approach a sale, but you have to, if you think that it's just going to be a price tag at the grocery store of an item on the shelf, and the people are just going to come in and pay that price and walk away with their widget or their can of soup or whatever, that's just not how negotiation works. You have a proposal, in essence, for someone to buy your business, and they're going to have a counter proposal, because now you don't have overlap. The goalposts are not defined clearly, and so there's some ambiguity there on one side of the table or the other side of the table, and so you're gonna have to do the work, and the negotiation ensues at that point. With the proposal being on the table, you should anticipate that there's going to be pushback. There's going to be a counter proposal, and I always say that negotiating is an enabling device. Our advice is always to try to find a way in which you can say yes to the person, as opposed to blocking everything, saying no, no, no. But if you can say yes to someone's proposal or counter proposal, it should come at a price. I can agree to that if we can do A, B, and C. I can agree to A, B, and C if you can do X, Y, and Z. So there's got to be this trade that happens, and therein lies the negotiation. Selling is, again, an act of persuading features and benefits, and it's a one-off, and you're just paying my price that's already listed. So a little bit different. And I think when people think of selling their business, I want to sell my business, then yeah, they have to think in terms of negotiation strategy to sell your business, which all happens before you actually get to the table. It's all about the setup. And this is where you guys and your business, I can't imagine selling a business without the help of exit planners, certified financial planners, to help me define some of those things, but also negotiate in such a way that I'm achieving the objectives that I set out and that I've said that I really want to achieve, recognizing that the strategy to get there might be flexible. It might look different depending what kind of market you're selling your business in, right? If it's amidst a pandemic, there's going to be, different things that you're having to consider than when you were planning this pre-pandemic. And so that's what I mean, is that your objective has to be rock solid, but the strategy to accomplish it has to be very flexible, because external factors disrupt. Health issues come in, family ties, divorces, tanking markets, all kinds of things that disrupt. And so it shouldn't disrupt my objective, but just my strategy to accomplish my objective. And negotiation has to be a key part of that. And good advice from people like you would be paramount.
That's so helpful, Randy. And listeners, again, as we said at the outset here, when it comes to negotiating this particular transaction where there's so much at stake, we strongly encourage that you engage professional assistance, because reality is, on the other side of the table, the buyer probably has a lot of experience negotiating these transactions. And if you don't have their level of experience and knowledge, then it's a good chance you're going to come out on the short end of the stick. And so we strongly recommend it. At the same time, if you find yourself involved with the negotiation at all, Randy's given us some great principles today. One of the primary principles that I come away with is be clear on the objective, but flexible. Make sure that you're clear on your goals and objectives going into it, so that your goalposts don't continue to move. And there's two goalposts. There's the alignment. If you have business partners, you need to know where you're aligned and where you're not, and if that goalpost is going to move. And then you have to seek to understand the other party's objectives, and because that goalpost can move too a lot. And so when all these goalposts start moving, there could be confusion and everything can just break down. We've been a party to it. We've seen what Randy here has described today in real life, in real time, happen to a point where the deal doesn't get done. And not only that, but there's a bad taste in everybody's mouth as to how it went. So I think you got some good advice here today. Randy, any parting thoughts as we wrap up?
No, look, thanks for the opportunity. I'll leave you with this quote. It was a FBI hostage negotiator that wrote a book it's escaping me, but I'll leave you with the quote. And it's Chris Voss. Chris Voss is the hostage negotiator. And he said, the most dangerous negotiation that you can be in. This is a hostage negotiator talking, right? The most dangerous negotiation you can be in is the one you don't even know is happening. Your counterpart is negotiating with you, and you don't even know it's happening. And so, to your point, Pat, you're right. The buyers engage professionals; they're ready for it. And if you're not, it's just a dangerous position to be in, because you could just hear the sound of money being sucked from your wallet as you don't get the best deal possible, just because you didn't plan properly. And so, don't go it alone. That's probably the key point.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. This has been really fantastic. So as we wrap up, two things, anything you'd like to promote today, and how can listeners contact you?
Well, look, I'm a consultant with Scott Work North America. I've been doing this negotiation consulting training for 45 years around the globe. You can find us at scottworkusa.com. I'm Randy Cutts. I'm found on LinkedIn. You can check us out. We come in and help people consult deals. We can advise, we can consult, we can coach. A lot of what we do in our sort of hallmark is to train people over a couple of day period. We can do it custom, or you can come on one of our open courses as well. So we help people change their behavior at the bargaining table and win more deals, and save relationships and save money in the same spread.
Thank you very much, Randy. Really, really appreciate it. Really, really great material. And listeners, if you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, you can reach Pat at 301-859-0860. You can reach me at 301-951-9090. You can also access resources at exitreadiness.com, grfcpa.com, and nslp.com. As always, thank you very much for listening. And until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Walter Dial and Pat Ennis signing off.